Storks are large, long-legged, long-necked wading birds with long, stout bills. They dwell in many regions and tend to live in drier habitats than the closely related herons and ibises. They also lack the powder down that those groups use to clean off fish slime. The painted stork is a large member of the family. Their distinctive pink tertial feathers of the adults give them their name. They forage in flocks in shallow waters along rivers or lakes. They immerse their half-open beaks in water and sweep them from side to side and snap up their prey of small fish that are sensed by touch. As they wade along, they also stir the water with their feet to flush hiding fish. They walk slowly and also disturb the water with their feet to flush fish. They also take frogs and the occasional snake. The white stork's plumage is mainly white, with black on the bird's wings. Adults have long red legs and long pointed red beaks, and measure on average 1 meter from beak tip to end of tail, with 2 meters wingspan. When migrating between Europe and Africa, it avoids crossing the Mediterranean Sea and detours via the Levant in the east or the Strait of Gibraltar in the west, because the air thermals on which it depends for soaring do not form over water. A carnivore, the white stork eats a wide range of animal prey. It takes most of its food from the ground, among low vegetation and from shallow water. It is a monogamous breeder, and both members of the pair build a large stick nest, which may be used for several years. It has been rated as least concerned by the International Union for Conservation of Nature. It benefited from human activities during the Middle Ages as woodland was cleared, but changes in farming methods and industrialization saw it decline and disappear from parts of Europe in the 90th centuries. This conspicuous species has given rise to many legends across its range, of which the best known is the story of babies being brought by storks. The oriental stork is typically larger than the white stork. Unlike its more widespread cousin, it has red skin around its eye, with a whitish iris and black bill. Due to habitat loss and overhunting, the oriental stork is classified as endangered. There have been efforts to reintroduce the storks to the wild, but there must be changes to the environment first. The storks were harshly impacted by the growth of the rice industry and the subsequent use of pesticides. There is a push for rice farmers to grow their plants organically so that the storks may breed and grow safely in their environments. It is a solitary bird except during the breeding season. It likes to wade in marshes, ponds' edges, coastal beaches, and other wetlands. These birds are apex predator in their habitat. The black stork has mainly black plumage, with white underparts, long red legs and a long pointed red beak. A widespread but uncommon species, it breeds in scattered locations across the Palearctic to the Pacific Ocean. It is a long-distance migrant, with European populations wintering in tropical sub-Saharan Africa, and Asian populations in the Indian subcontinent. Unlike the closely related white stork, the black stork is a shy and wary species. It is seen singly or in pairs, usually in marshy areas, rivers or inland waters. It feeds on amphibians, small fish and insects, generally wading slowly in shallow water stalking its prey. Breeding pairs usually build nests in large forest trees, most commonly deciduous but also coniferous, which can be seen from long distances, as well as on large boulders, or under overhanging ledges in mountainous areas. The jabiru is the tallest flying bird found in South America, often standing nearly the same height as the flightless and thus much heavier greater rhea. The adult jabiru is 120 to 140 centimeters long and can weigh 4 to 9 kilograms. Sexual dimorphism is high, possibly the highest of any stork, with males being about 25% larger than females. While it can give the impression of being an ungainly bird on the ground, the jabiru is a powerful and graceful flyer. Jabirus detect prey more through tactile sensation than vision. They feed by holding their open bill at a 45-degree angle to the water. When prey is contacted, the storks close their bill, draw it out of the water, and throw their head back to swallow. Leptoptylos robustus was a huge stork, closely related to the living marabou but estimated to have been at least 20% larger. It had a chunkier build with unusually heavy thick-walled bones, suggesting it may have become functionally flightless. There were few large carnivorous mammals on Flores, and this bird would have had little competition for carrion and prey. It may even have filled an ecological niche similar to the giant Hatzegopteryx of Cretaceous Haiteg Island. The known remains date to the late Pleistocene, around 50,000 to 20,000 years ago, and this giant bird seems to have gone extinct sometime during that date range. It's unclear what killed it off, but possible factors include a changing climate on the island, a major volcanic eruption and the arrival of modern humans. Unlike most storks, marabou storks fly with the neck retracted like a heron. It is unmistakable due to its size, bare head and neck. Like most storks, it is gregarious and a colonial breeder. It is known to be quite ill-tempered. It also resembles other storks in that it is not very vocal, but indulges in bill-rattling courtship displays. The throat sac is also used to make various noises at that time. The marabou stork is a frequent scavenger, and the naked head and long neck are adaptations to this livelihood, as it is with the vultures with which the stork often feeds. In both cases, a feathered head would become rapidly clotted with blood and other substances when the bird's head was inside a large corpse, and the bare head is easier to keep clean. This large and powerful bird eats mainly carrion, scraps and feces but will opportunistically eat almost any animal matter it can swallow. Though known to eat putrid and seemingly inedible foods, these storks may sometimes wash food in water to remove soil. Increasingly, marabous have become dependent on human garbage, and hundreds of the huge birds can be found around African dumps or waiting for a hand out in urban areas. Marabous eating human garbage have been seen to devour virtually anything that they can swallow, including shoes and pieces of metal. Known from around the North Pacific Rim, Plotopterids were flightless diving birds which used their small but powerful wings to propel themselves through the water. They were convergently similar to penguins in body shape and lifestyle, but not actually closely related to them, while more related to cormorants and gannets. Smaller Plotopterids were about the size of modern cormorants, around 70 centimeters long, but the larger known genera like Copepteryx rivaled the southern giant penguins at around 1.8 meters. Plotopterum is an outlier compared to other Plotopterids. Despite being stratigraphically the youngest genus of Plotopterid, most of its larger relatives going extinct at the end of the Oligocene, it seems to have kept primitive characteristics and was not as specialized for wing-propelled diving than other, older but more derived Plotopterids. It has been suggested that the isolation of the ghost lineage limited to the Miocene of California and Japan, to which belong Plotopterum, may have permitted the preservation of basal traits. Cormorants are large birds. The majority of species have dark feathers. All species are fish eaters, catching the prey by diving from the surface. They are excellent divers, and underwater they propel themselves with their feet with help from their wings. They have relatively short wings due to their need for economical movement underwater, and consequently have among the highest flight costs of any flying bird. The double-crested cormorant swims low in the water, often with just its neck and head visible, and dives from the surface. It uses its feet for propulsion and is able to dive to a depth of 1 to 8 meters for 30 to 70 seconds. After diving, it spends long periods standing with its wings outstretched to allow them to dry, since they are not fully waterproofed. Great cormorant is a very common and widespread bird species. It feeds on the sea, in estuaries, and on freshwater lakes and rivers. Northern birds migrate south and winter along any coast that is well supplied with fish. Many fishermen see in the great cormorant a competitor for fish. Because of this, it was hunted nearly to extinction in the past. Due to conservation efforts, its numbers increased. At the moment, there are about 1.2 million birds in Europe. Increasing populations have once again brought the cormorant into conflict with fisheries. Studies suggest that their hearing has evolved for underwater usage, possibly aiding their detection of fish. These adaptations also have a cost on their hearing ability in air, which is of lowered sensitivity. The brown boob is a large seabird of the booby family Sulidae, of which it is perhaps the most common and widespread species. It has a pantropical range, which overlaps with that of other booby species. The gregarious brown booby commutes and forages at low height over inshore waters. Its pairs may remain together over several seasons. They perform elaborate greeting rituals, and are also spectacular divers, plunging into the ocean at high speed. They mainly eat small fish or shrimp which gather in groups near the surface and may catch leaping fish while skimming the surface. Along with plunge diving, some fledglings and some adults practice kleptoparasitism, where they steal prey from other seabirds. Although they are powerful and agile flyers, they are particularly clumsy in takeoffs and landings. They use strong winds and high perches to assist their takeoffs. The blue-footed booby is easily recognizable by its distinctive bright blue feet, which is a sexually selected trait and comes from structures of aligned collagens in the skin modified by carotenoid pigments obtained from its diet of fresh fish. That color is modified by carotenoids to aquamarine in healthy birds. Carotenoids also act as antioxidants and stimulants for the blue-footed booby's immune function, suggesting that carotenoid pigmentation is an indicator of an individual's immunological state. Blue feet also indicate the current health condition of a booby. Males display their feet in an elaborate mating ritual by lifting them up and down while strutting before the female. It usually lays 1 to 3 eggs at a time. The species practices asynchronous hatching, in contrast to many other species whereby incubation begins when the last egg is laid and all chicks hatch together. This results in a growth inequality and size disparity between siblings, leading to facultative siblicide in times of food scarcity. This makes the blue-footed booby an important model for studying parent-offspring conflict and sibling rivalry. Since the blue-footed booby preys on fish by diving headlong into the water, its nostrils are permanently closed, and it has to breathe through the corners of its mouth. Northern gannets have streamlined bodies adapted for plunge diving at high speed, including powerful neck muscles and a spongy bone plate at the base of the bill. The nostrils are inside the bill and can be closed to prevent water entry. The eyes are protected by strong nictitating membranes. The feathers are waterproof, which allows the birds to spend long periods in water. A water-impermeable secretion produced by a sebaceous gland covers the feathers and the birds spread it across their body using their beak or head. Some northern gannet breeding colonies have been recorded as being located in the same place for hundreds of years. The cliffs containing the colonies appear white when seen from a distance, due to the number of nesting birds present on them. Gannets usually push their prey deeper into the water and capture it as they return to the surface. When a dive is successful, they swallow the fish underwater before surfacing, and never fly with the fish in their bill. Larger fish are swallowed head first, smaller fish are swallowed sideways or tail first. The fish is stored in a branched bag in the throat and does not cause drag when in flight. Like the American flamingo, the roseate spoonbill pink color is diet-derived, consisting of the carotenoid pigment canthaxanthin. The colors can range from pale pink to bright magenta, depending on age, whether breeding or not, and location. Unlike herons, spoonbills fly with their necks outstretched. They alternate groups of stiff, shallow wing beats with glides. Little is known about the roseate spoonbill's behavior outside of their foraging habits. This species feeds in shallow fresh or coastal waters by swinging its bill from side to side as it steadily walks through the water, often in groups. Moreover, the spoon-shaped bill allows it to sift easily through mud. The Ardeidae ibis is an ibis native to sub-Saharan Africa. It is named for its loud 3 to 4 note calls uttered in flight, especially in the mornings and evenings when they fly out or return to their roost trees. Although not as dependent on water as some ibises, they are found near wetlands and often live in close proximity to humans, foraging in cultivated land and gardens. A medium-sized ibis with stout legs and a typical down-curved bill, the wing coverts are iridescent with a green or purple sheen. They are non-migratory but are known to make nomadic movements in response to rain, particularly during droughts. The Jamaican ibis was a bird unique to the Caribbean island of Jamaica. One of only 2 known types of completely flightless ibises, it was similar in size to a chicken. It had some incredibly unusual wing anatomy, with strengthened bones, a proportionally short forearm, and the hand section modified into a thick club-like shape. Some remains show evidence of blunt force injuries, suggesting these birds fought each other by swinging around their heavy wings like baseball bats. It's unclear whether Xenus ibis was still around when humans first colonized the island, but if so, it was probably driven to extinction soon after. Maui flightless ibis was closely related to the modern scarlet ibis. It was flightless, with reduced wings, and had unusually short stocky legs that gave it proportions much more like a kiwi than an ibis. And it probably lived very much like a kiwi, too, probing around in the forest litter with its beak searching for snails and other invertebrates. The northern bald ibis is a migratory bird found in barren, semi-desert or rocky habitats, often close to running water. It was once widespread across the Middle East, northern Africa, southern and central Europe, with a fossil record dating back at least 1.8 million years. It disappeared from Europe over 300 years ago. In 2019 there were about 700 wild birds remaining in southern Morocco, and fewer than 10 in Syria, where it was rediscovered in 2002 but where their number declined in the following years, maybe to 0. The long-term decline in Europe has been linked to hunting and eating them, especially the fledglings. Together with the slow reproduction of the ibises, this may lead to local extinction. The crested ibis is a large, white-plumaged ibis of pine forests, native to Eastern Asia. Its head is partially bare, showing red skin, and it has a dense crest of white plumes on the nape. In the 80s, the birds were decimated by overhunting, the use of pesticides, ongoing habitat loss, their already small population size, their limited range, winter starvation and persecution, which together brought the endangered species to the brink of extinction. Extensive captive breeding programs have been developed by Japan and China to conserve the species. On September 25, 2008 in Sato, the Japanese Crested Ibis Preservation Center released 10 of the birds as part of its Crested Ibis Restoration Program, which aimed to introduce 60 ibises into the wild by 2015. It was the first time the bird has returned to the Japanese wild since 1981. The island of Réunion was formed southwest of Mauritius only about 2 to 3 million years ago, and likewise developed its own vertebrate ecosystem, arriving via island hopping and rafting. Réunion ibis had a much chunkier build than other ibises. Its beak was shorter and straighter, and it had reduced flight capabilities. A combination of its island tameness and the fact that it was considered to be good eating resulted in it being heavily hunted during the 70th century, and along with pressure from invasive mammals, it soon became a rare sight, found only in more remote highland areas of the island. The African sacred ibis is native to much of Africa, as well as small parts Asia Minor. It is especially known for its role in ancient Egyptian religion, where it was linked to the god Thoth. However, the species is currently extirpated from Egypt. For many centuries until the Roman period, the main temples buried a few dozen of thousands of birds a year, and to sustain sufficient numbers for the demand for sacrifices by pilgrims from all over Egypt, it was for some time believed that ibis breeding farms existed. Aristotle mentions that many sacred ibises are found all over Egypt. Strabo mentions large amounts of the birds in the streets of Alexandria, where he was living at the time, picking through the trash, attacking provisions and defiling everything with their dung. By 1850, however, the species had disappeared from Egypt both as a breeding and migrant population. An examination of the genetic diversity among mummified ibises suggested that there was no reduction in genetic diversity as would be caused if they were bred in captivity, and further studies on isotopes suggest that the birds were not just wild-caught but came from a wide geographic range. In form, scarlet ibis resembles most of the other 27 extant species of ibis, but its remarkably brilliant scarlet coloration makes it unmistakable. To attract a female, the male will perform a variety of mating rituals. As with most birds, mating does not involve any coupling or insertion. Instead, a transfer of seminal fluids occurs during external contact between the cloacal openings. Their distinctive long, thin bills are used to probe for food in soft mud or under plants. Popularly imagined to be eating only shrimp, a recent study has found that much of their diet consists of insects, of which the majority were scarabs and ground beetles. Herons are long-legged, long-necked, freshwater and coastal birds, with 72 recognized species, some of which are referred to as egrets or bitterns rather than herons. Egrets do not form a biologically distinct group from herons, and tend to be named differently because they are mainly white or have decorative plumes in breeding plumage. Herons, by evolutionary adaptation, have long beaks. Although they resemble birds in some other families, such as the storks and cranes, they differ from these in flying with their necks retracted, not outstretched. They are also one of the bird groups that have powder down. Herons locate their food by sight and usually swallow it whole. They have been known to choke on prey that is too large. They are generally solitary feeders. Individuals usually forage while standing in water, but also feed in fields or drop from the air, or perch, into water. Mice are occasionally preyed on in upland areas far from the species' typical aquatic environments. The black heron uses a hunting method called canopy feeding. It uses its wings like an umbrella, creating shade that attracts fish. Some have been observed feeding in solitary, while others feed in groups of up to 50 individuals, 200 being the highest number reported. The black heron feeds by day but especially prefers the time around sunset. It roosts communally at night, and coastal flocks roost at high tide. The primary food of the black heron is small fish, but it will also eat aquatic insects, crustaceans and amphibians. The nest of the black heron is constructed of twigs placed over water in trees, bushes and reed beds, forming a solid structure. The heron nests at the beginning of the rainy season, in single or mixed species colonies that may number in the hundreds. The yellow-crowned night heron is a rather stocky wading bird, ranging from 55 to 70 centimeters and from 650 to 850 grams. Like all herons, it flies with long, slow purposeful wing beats. It can be found gliding over water with its legs easily visible, extended straight below the tail, unlike the black-crowned night heron, whose legs can barely be seen in flight. It has no real competition for food. The adults have virtually no predators, but the nests are vulnerable to other animals. Both the eggs and the young are an appealing meal to American crows and some mammals such as raccoons. The hammerkop is a medium-sized wading bird. The shape of its head with a long bill and crest at the back is reminiscent of a hammer, which has given this species its name after the Afrikaans word for hammerhead. It is a medium-sized waterbird with brown plumage. It is a sedentary bird that often shows local movements. It takes a wide range of prey, mostly fish and amphibians, but shrimps, insects and rodents are taken too. Prey is usually hunted in shallow water, either by sight or touch, but the species is adaptable and will take any prey it can. The species is renowned for its enormous nests, several of which are built during the breeding season. Unusually for a wading bird, the nest has an internal nesting chamber where the eggs are laid. Both parents incubate the eggs and raise the chicks. The shoebill is noted for its slow movements and tendency to stay still for long periods, resulting in descriptions of the species as statue-like. They are quite sensitive to human disturbance and may abandon their nests if flushed by humans. However, while foraging, if dense vegetation stands between it and humans, this wader can be fairly tame. The shoebill is attracted to poorly oxygenated waters such as swamps, marshes and bogs where fish frequently surface to breathe. They also seem to exhibit migratory behaviors based upon differences in the surface water level. Immature shoebills abandon nesting sites which increased in the surface water level, whereas adult shoebills abandon nesting sites which decreased in surface water level. It is suggested that both adult and immature shoebills prefer nesting sites with similar surface water levels. This species stalks its prey patiently, in a slow and lurking fashion. Unlike some other large waders, it hunts entirely using vision and is not known to engage in tactile hunting. When prey is spotted, it launches a quick violent strike. However, depending on the size of the prey, handling time after the strike can exceed 10 minutes. Pelicans are large water birds that make up the family Pelecanidae. They are characterized by a long beak and a large throat pouch used for catching prey and draining water from the scooped-up contents before swallowing. They have predominantly pale plumage, except for the brown pelicans. The 8 living pelican species have a patchy, seasonally dependent yet global distribution, ranging latitudinally from the tropics to the temperate zone. The great white pelican is highly sociable and often forms large flocks. It is well adapted for aquatic life. The short strong legs and webbed feet propel it in water and aid a rather awkward takeoff from the water surface. In flight, it is an elegant soaring bird, with the head held close to and aligned with the body. Its flight consists of a few slow wing beats followed by a glide. Once aloft, the long-winged pelicans are powerful flyers, however, and often travel in spectacular linear, circular, or V-formation groups. Dalmatian pelicans' curly nape feathers, gray legs and silvery white plumage are distinguishing features, and the wings appear solid gray in flight. The adults acquire a drabber plumage in winter, however, when they may be mistaken for great white pelicans. Their harsh vocalizations become more pronounced during the mating season. They usually return to traditional breeding sites, where they are less social than other pelican species. Their nests are crude heaps of vegetation, which are placed on islands or on dense mats of vegetation. It normally swims along, placidly and slowly, until it quickly dunks its head underwater and scoops the fish out, along with great masses of water. The water is dumped out of the sides of the pouch and the fish is swallowed. The brown pelican mainly feeds on fish, but occasionally eats amphibians, crustaceans, and the eggs and nestlings of birds. It nests in colonies in secluded areas, often on islands, vegetated land among sand dunes, thickets of shrubs and trees and mangroves. It usually plunge dives headfirst for its prey, from a height as great as 10 to 20 meters, especially for anchovies and menhaden. Holding their wings only loosely against their bodies, pelicans float with relatively little of their bodies below the water surface. They dissipate excess heat by gular flutter, rippling the skin of the throat and pouch with the bill open to promote evaporative cooling. They roost and loaf communally on beaches, sandbanks, and in shallow water. Most brown pelican populations are resident and dispersive. Some migration is observed, especially in the northern parts of the species range, but these movements are often erratic, depending on local conditions.